On this week's episode, the Sandman brings dreams to Netflix. Bullet Train rides to the top of the box office. And Disney says, I am Groot. All this and more as we once again delve into the pop culture cosmos.
Welcome to the Pop Culture Cosmos.
And we're back with another episode of the Pop Culture Cosmos. This is Gerald Glassford from Pop Culture Cosmos, Game Source, Inside Sports Fantasy Football, and the Lakers Fast Break. We truly appreciate everyone out there listening to all of our great shows. And if you can, please give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. Plus, if you can like, share, subscribe, follow, or do anything that you can to support us right here at the Pop Culture Cosmos, Game Source, Inside Sports Fantasy Football, the Lakers Fast Break, and everything that we do here at the Pop Culture Cosmos, because we're the #1 tabletop RPG streamer on Facebook. Catch all the many, many hours that we do each and every week, right from the tabletop RPG streaming that we do each and every week at the Pop Culture Cosmos on Facebook, where you can also catch the latest news and trends in pop culture each and every day right there for you. Plus, also, if you can go ahead and take care of us at popculturecosmos.com, like, share, subscribe, follow, or do anything that you can to support us right here at the Pop Culture Cosmos. And if you do, it is sincerely appreciated. But it wouldn't be a Pop Culture Cosmos without my good friend. He is our own Cheers fan of Pop Culture Cosmos, although I actually kind of like it too. It's where everybody knows your name. You got to go ahead and check out what he's doing today at popculturecosmos.com. Plus, also as well, his work for the Happy Hoarder, and also as well the Super BS Gamescast, plus everything that he does today, including his amazing book, which you still haven't got, which you should get, which is called Congratulations, You Suck, which is available right now at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. It is my good friend. It is Josh Culture Cosmos, a.k.a. Josh Peterson. What's up, man?
What's up? You know what? I look at shows like Cheers, and I think they were such products of their time, but they should also be their own genre. Like they just make you feel good, and that's why I like watching movies like Miracle and Invincible so much, because like, I don't know, there's something about that era that just like makes you feel good, Does that make sense?
It does, but I'm just still amazed that Ted Danson and Woody Harrelson are still very active in the acting community. In fact, Ted Danson just got blown up. Spoilers! In the Orville, and then Woody Harrelson, he's still a major star. The Man from Toronto, he's just started on with Netflix, and plus he's doing a lot of things. Man, he's the Hunger Games, Star Wars. You relate him to that. He's done a lot of great work over the years in the Venom movie. Yeah, the Venom sequel. Yeah, absolutely done a lot of great work over the years. He's just as successful as ever. Ted Danson is still doing a lot of things, even though Mr. Mayor got canceled on television. But
it's a one-season show, man.
Yeah, kind of funny how that worked out for him. But I'm sure Ted Danson's going to land on his feet. Well, at least not in the Orville, that's for sure. But I will say that Cheers should have its long-lasting legacy in reruns forever. But my gosh, the legacy that Cheers will have as far as the TV sitcom community is almost unparalleled.
Well, and they did a good job. I mean, if you look at it through a modern lens, where everyone's trying to like reboot or remake things, with like they did a good job of like highlighting both male and female characters, like giving them their chance to shine in that show. And I don't know, it's just like it had a really good, all the characters had a really good dynamic between each other. And I think that was like one of my favorite parts, is because all those characters were incredibly well developed.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it couldn't sustain itself after Shelley Long left the show, and Kirstie Alley tried to do the best that they could to try and create that, or at least recreate that dynamic, but unfortunately did not quite work itself out long term the way it worked out before in the Shelley Long Ted Danson dynamic. But again,
Yeah, that was good. All right, before we move on, I got a story to tell our audience here.
Story time. Okay, here we
I
go.
learned
Here we
I
go.
learned a lesson today in this week in letting kids change the discs on your video game consoles. Partially my fault because of my obsession with physical media. You know, I will not go silently into the all digital future, but my kids were playing the PS5 and I was like, "Oh, cool, they're getting into video games." And then one of them asked to change the disc in the PS5, and I was like, "Oh, sure." And because naturally I just assumed that they like kind of knew what they were doing, but she took the disc and she ripped, the little plastic pieces that like keep the discs inside the cases.
Mm-hmm.
She like grabbed the disc and ripped it out, and that plastic piece was stuck to the disc. And then she stuck it
Mm,
into the PS5, and
mm.
now it doesn't read and it scratches discs. So I took it to the local game shop. They're trying to fix it, but I tell you, man, like just learning new parenting things all the time, and if they can't fix it, it's just a $500 paperweight.
Okay, if everybody wants to tune back to when the PlayStation 5 came out, actually for you actually admitted on the air it wasn't just a $500
No, it
paperweight.
wasn't. I think I spent like 700 on it. I bought it off a local Baylor kid out here who was using his bots to pay for his college tuition.
Mm-hmm.
And so I ended up paying like a $200 premium on it. And I don't know now, like I can just go to the store and buy them. So I guess if I would have just waited, it wouldn't have been an issue.
And he's now entering his fall semester at Baylor.
This is true.
Yes, with his scholarship, I'm sure almost fully paid for, thanks to the PlayStation 5.
Yep, and fools like me.
We had this discussion 2 years ago, so I'm not going to go into it now. Yeah, thought you were crazy then, and I still think you're crazy now. But a lot of great things to talk about on today's program. Going to be talking about the Sandman, which has made its home this weekend on Netflix. A lot of people are talking about that. Are they talking about that because the fact that it's really the only thing that's new and it's hitting out there outside of Bullet Train? Or are they really into it because of the fact that it is a good show? We'll talk about that coming up here in a bit. We'll also be talking about Bullet Train. How well did it do at the box office? We'll also talk about that coming up here in a sec. Plus also as well, Disney says I Am Groot, because I Am Groot is coming out this week. We'll talk about that. Plus another show you need to give attention to on Disney Plus that's coming on August the 10th that you can help save for the future. We'll talk about that on the back end of the show. Plus also as well, our thoughts on the upcoming battle here over the next month and a half, almost leading into 2 months between Lord of the Rings of Power, and Game of Thrones, House of Dragon. We'll talk about which one we're excited about more and which one ultimately we think will be a success. We'll talk about that coming up on this show as well. But first, my friend, a correction from Friday, because here in Las Vegas, Evo has taken place over the course of the weekend. I know it wasn't part of the official roster, but it was a part of Evo, and that is WB Multiversus. They did run their own separate, or actually, it was part of the actual Evo experience, but it was its own separate $100,000 tournament. I guess because the game is still in open beta, that they did want to go ahead and make it part of the official Evo tournament per se, but they did run it concurrently as part of the Evo scene and a $100,000 tournament for this really cool brawler featuring many of the WB characters, although actually it's just started off by introducing just a few characters like Rick, Morty, Shaggy, Batman. You've seen some of the trailers that are out there. They do actually have some very recognizable characters. But your thoughts on WB Multiversus before I go into more detail on the future of this game? Right now, it seems to be gaining a lot of interest. It's gaining a lot of traction on Twitch, and it seems to be a game that maybe has a future out there as a free-to-play game.
This is going to be the new Battle Royale. This is what these games are going to become. And I wonder, too, like if any of these games, like whether it's Nickelodeon Brawl or Multiversus or whatever it might be, like these little games would exist if not for the internet's obsession with putting Shaggy into Mortal Kombat.
Well, you know what? Shaggy is. I think it's cool. As a big Shaggy fan over the years, and as someone who actually thought he could do the voice, Zoice, and all that for the longest time, I think that it is a welcome sight to see Shaggy get his place in the spotlight because he's actually featured him and Batman. If you look at the cover, it's not
Mhm.
Scooby Doo who would normally get that spot. It's actually Shaggy that is ready to go ahead and fling the batarang per se as part of
Mhm.
the deal. As far as instead of it's funny because Batman has his lunch, his food as his weapon, and Shaggy is holding his batarang. I guess that's part of the whole nuance of the game itself, as far as being able to go ahead and utilize all the weapons you can, and how they're customizable to what these characters are all about. And so, yeah, it really looks good. I'm really hoping for a good future for the game. I'm really thinking that this could be something that could be a hit. I mean, it emulates so much the Super Smash Brothers style and formula. I really think it's something that a lot of people can get into. Hey, it's free to play, so at least it's worth a try.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's true. And honestly, like the esports scene can only grow from where it's at right now. So the more the merrier, I guess I would say. But also, it's cool, I guess, to see these characters that have crossed generations being highlighted in games like this. So people can, will get curious and be like, oh, where did this come from? And they'll go back and check out some of the properties that are attached to this game. So it's not for me, but, I think it's probably a good thing that it does exist.
Well, it seems to be very popular right now, and I understand that it's the new toy out there, and the fact that we've talked about how there's a dearth of or a lack of abundance of video games, I guess, right now so far in 2022. That this has come out to some great fanfare. Seems to be, as far as the open beta, widely approved and accepted, which is always a good thing. And obviously, getting some highlighted coverage at Evo is a welcome benefit with this $100,000 tournament. But let me give everybody a rundown on the characters that they've introduced so far: Shaggy, Rain Dog, Steven Universe, Garnet, Harley Quinn, Arya Stark, which I think was actually a cool move, introducing a Game of Thrones character, Finn, Taz, Wonder Woman, Jake from Adventure Time, Superman, Batman, Bugs Bunny, Tom and Jerry, Velma from Scooby Doo, the Iron Giant, which I thought was another really cool move, LeBron James, even though it's not LeBron James voicing the character, but okay, from Space Jam, and Rick and Morty. So again, I think it's just a start, obviously. I know season one, they have now announced that it's going to be delayed. So I don't know how much different that's going to be from the open beta, but they said that it isn't because of the current restructuring and issues going on with the parent company, WB. They said this is unrelated, which I'm actually going to agree because, as you and I know, the video game industry has delayed a lot of things lately, which is part of the reason why 2022 is such a weak year for me. But I think this is going to be something that, with the proper help and benefit, and also the layout of characters going forward, I think that's something that really could hit. But the thing is, now with the WB, which we'll probably go into more here in a second, because I know you want to talk about the Batgirl situation. I think with the WB and Warner Brothers restructuring, that could come into play as far as the game's success long term.
Yeah, I mean, Warner Brothers, everything's all up in the air right now, and it'd be cool because I know before they were getting rid of a lot of assets that they had, like they're actually trying to get the game divisions of Warner Brothers acquired by somebody. So now with this new shakeup over there, like maybe this could be a chance for them to start fresh with their gaming stuff and maybe put out some more quality products. And maybe we'll see more Lord of the Rings, more games like the Multiversus. I don't know. There's a lot of fun Warner Brothers things out there that could be, made into something cool. So I don't know. I guess like there's a lot that's uncertain right now. It's hard to it's hard to say for sure whether it'll be a good thing or a bad thing. But like I said, right now I'm just it's cool that this thing got the momentum it did and is being allowed to exist, amongst the ranks of like Street Fighter and Dragon Ball and all that stuff.
Well, that's the thing. Outside of, I think, because WB Games has what, the Shadows of Mordor, its sequel, that kind of died down after a while, even after the hype of how well it started out. Shadows of Mordor was a very much beloved game. And then you have, I think, the Mortal Kombat games are part of WB Games, if I'm not mistaken. And outside of that, there's really not a whole lot until you get to Multiverses. So this could be a big boost for WB Games, or at least make them more attractive for someone to come in and buy it.
Maybe it'd be attractive for someone to come and buy it, but I also think there's a great opportunity for them to like really hang on to this thing and bolster it and, you know, start putting out some quality products. So, I mean, even looking at the Arrowverse, right? Like there's a lot of cool gaming potential in there too. Like it's just, I don't know, like it seems like there's some things that they could do if they kept it in house that they, you know, wouldn't be able to do otherwise.
Well, I want to hear your thoughts on WB Multiverses, which is again making a big splash here at Evo, even though it isn't part of the regular rotation or the official rotation, is actually much a part of in its own $100,000 tournament. It's still an open beta, so they're still smoothing out some rough edges. But if you are into a Super Smash Brothers like contender, I'm not saying it's better than Super Smash Brothers. I think it's got a long way to go there, but it's got initially a very favorable response. It's got some great characters, got some interesting twists. So please let us know your thoughts on WB Multiverse. Is it something you're playing now, or is it a free to play game? Is it something you're willing to get into in the future? Please let us know your thoughts. PopCultureCosmos at yahoo.com.
Hey, this is Chad from Ghost Toasters, and you're listening to Pop Culture Cosmos Podcast.
For the latest news and information, analysis and opinions on the Los Angeles Lakers and the NBA, check out the Lakers Fast Break podcast today on wherever you get your podcasts. Well, my friend, touching on, like we did before the break, about WB's issues. I know Melinda and I broke it down in a lot of detail in regards to the continuing issues regarding Warner Brothers, the whole the Discovery merger, the fact that HBO Max and Discovery in summer 2023 will finally become an on-screen product merged together and will become one thing. But the issues about hundreds of millions of dollars in markdowns, trying to go ahead and just try to go ahead and right the ship per se. I didn't think it was doing too bad before. I thought HBO Max was on the way up. It is still gaining subscribers as we speak. It's around 92 million as a shared entity with Discovery and HBO. But there's a lot of issues behind the scenes and a lot of things that went on. I mean, the fact that they were billions short on their revenue, mostly tied into the merger issue. They're going to have to do a lot of layoffs and restructuring in the near future. We saw what happened with the 6 original movies that they took off of HBO Max, that they could go ahead and do a partial write down. Of course, we saw what happened with Scoob, the holiday movie that was coming out, and also as well House Party reboot, and of course, most importantly, the DC Batgirl movie, which was $90 million already finished, just going through post-production. They all were basically shelved as far as it's concerned, so there could be a tax write-down of massive proportions. Your thoughts on this whole situation? Because I think it will lead to something for long-term that's going to be a potential issue of growth for HBO Max and Discovery.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand the merger, like, you know, whatever's happening, and it just like I can see that it would be stressful on, you know, on the company itself. As for like HBO Max, you know, they kind of like, yeah, their subscribership was up, but like this just goes to show that model didn't work as well as they thought that it was going to, because they have Dune straight to HBO Max. If they were to have put that in theaters first, I guarantee you that it would have made a very large chunk of money from people who, you know, wouldn't sit on their couch to watch it.
Well, that was a day and date. That was both theaters, and it still made $400 million and got greenlit for a sequel.
But I think that we would have seen a lot more money had it not been put out in, on HBO Max as well, because
Fair enough.
when you give people what do you call it? When you give people an opportunity to watch something like at home for less money, they're going to do that for sure. So I mean, well, I appreciate it. I appreciate being able to watch stuff like that and the Batman and all that. Like, I appreciate it. I love it. I got kids, and finances are tight when you're work. You got three kids going to school and having to buy dinner. Sorry, all that stuff though. Like, it's I appreciate being able to do that. But also, like, you look at it from their perspective, like, they're probably not making as much money as they could. So it makes me wonder, like, sure, it was a success as far as subscriptions goes, but was it really a success as far as like the movie's financials go?
Well, that's something that they're going to do a detour on. There's no longer going to be any HBO Max original movies, at least not in the near future per se. I know that they're gearing more towards high-end, high-cost, high production value as far as their movies, at least on the DC end, and then also as well their series. I think Peacemaker is still a go, but a lot of what we've seen so far in the DC universe is now up in question.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. So we're looking at it. There's been a lot of interesting things going on, right? We have Ben Affleck coming back as Batman and Aquaman. So from what I'm reading, and I've read a lot of things that have backed this claim up. Michael Keaton was originally supposed to be an Aquaman, and then now that Ben Affleck has said, I want to come back as Batman, they're reshooting scenes that Michael Keaton originally did. So, I'm looking at this and thinking, like, they're really just making this up as they go. Ben Affleck said, I don't want to be Batman anymore. So I think that that's why they're bringing Michael Keaton back via Flashpoint, right? Because they're trying to write Batman out. And now they're just kind of flipping the script because Ben Affleck wants to, I guess, stay in the role or whatever he's doing.
Well, I think as long as he's on somebody else's project for about a 10 or 20 minutes of screen time, I think he's probably cool with that.
Right. So, now I'm looking at that, and then, you think about the comments with The Rock saying, like, oh, Black Adam is going to shape they're basically, the Justice Society is going to be the new Justice League. And, like, you have all these things, like, they have no idea what they're doing. They say we have a 10-year plan. They don't. They have no idea what is going on.
Well, I think that's what their eventual goal is, to find someone who helped right the ship in order to make a 10-year plan that's coherent and cohesive.
Right, and they're not even acknowledging, a lot of these articles that I'm reading, the journalists are saying that the studios will not give them access to use Zack Snyder's Justice League clips because they don't even acknowledge that as being canon.
Yeah,
like,
that's
the official version is Joss Whedon's Justice League cut.
Yeah, that's kind of disappointing right there. And with that, I think that you're going to see still some growing pains. This is something, again, where I talk about the whiteboard with Kevin Feige's whiteboard. You go over there to the Marvel offices, and the whiteboard looks like a nice, complete. It wasn't as maybe as well structured as it once was, but it's still pretty good, still pretty structured. Looked like it was pretty good. As far as Phase 4, Phase 5, and Phase 6, what was outlined at Comic-Con, it eased a little bit of my concern, not all of it, but it eased a little bit of my concern what they talked about at San Diego Comic-Con. Whereas with DC, it's all over the place. Like you said, you've got the Batman in a different timeline. You've got Joker 2, which is supposed to be coming out in 2024 because Lady Gaga is now going to play the Harley Quinn in that scenario, which is different from Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn. Again, it's all over the place when it comes to DC. I think with their successes in certain different movies like Aquaman, it's different from the success of the Joker, which is different from the success of the Batman. Because they're all over the place, Flashpoint is now more important than ever.
It truly is. And I look at a lot of the DC's issues, like Walter Hamada, right? He almost quit over the whole Batgirl incident. And I think that he hates the Snyder stuff because it's been such a pain in the butt for him. And now it's like it's his pride that's on the line. Like they're refusing to like acknowledge the stuff that Snyder did because of the Snyder cut, right? The fans want this instead of what the studio wants. And I think that that's giving them a lot of problems. And, I look at something like the Justice League, like even if they don't have Snyder finish his thing, have somebody else come in and do it. Like they need to close that dark side story loop, because like this would be like Marvel using 10 years to tease like the buildup of Thanos, and then he just didn't show up in Infinity War.
You've mentioned that. I've seen your social media posts. Obviously, that is a great concern to you. I just don't think Darkseid resonates as well as Thanos in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, just because they did such a poor job at WB and DC of promoting Darkseid as a threatening and overall important character. I just don't think he resonates quite as well.
Yeah, and another big issue is it all happened so like Snyder's stuff happened so fast. There was no gradual buildup like there was in Marvel. Like you got teased the Thanos stuff, and you had the end credit scene saying like, "Hey, this threat's out there. It's looming. It's getting closer." Whereas like with DC stuff, it just like happened one thing after another. Going on to the Batgirl thing, like I honestly I think that that's a smart move. Like I think that it should be released at some point. Like if you want to.
Yeah, but then again, they have to pay taxes because of it. They got the write down because they're not going to go ahead and show it. If they actually eventually do or sell it off, if it ever sees the light of day, then somebody's going to have to be paying some taxes on it.
Oh, that's well, I mean, hopefully at some point they'll be in a better financial position and they can do something like that. Like, don't put it in a closet forever. Like, let people see it eventually. But I think it's a smart move if they're restructuring and it's nothing against the director, nothing against the actress. It's just like if they're restructuring and they're trying to rebuild the DCU and this does not match continuity or the quality that they're looking for, don't put it out there for people. But, maybe at a later date, put it out, whether it's like a digital release or like a physical release. Let people eventually see the work that went into this thing, whether or not you're going to acknowledge that it, treat it like, what is David Hasselhoff's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. movie? Do you remember that thing?
Yeah.
Treat it like that. If anything else, just let it be. But it is tragic for the people who are involved with it.
You know what? I got an idea. Go ahead and let a copy just leak out onto the internet and put it on YouTube for free or for charity. And there you go. You don't have to worry about the markdown.
Ooh, yeah. That's a good idea. There's always a loophole. Always a loophole.
Absolutely. So it looks like there's still going to be issues long term for the WB going forward. I'm hoping that somehow the restructuring of HBO Max, Discovery, and Warner Brothers will somehow lead to a more cohesive product. I was really liking the momentum from the first half of the year that HBO Max was doing with all of its great series: Euphoria, Winning Time, Our Flag Means Death, Tokyo Vice. Some really good shows have been on the streaming service in the past few months. It was really starting to get some good momentum outside of the day-and-date movies that it relied upon the first 2 years of its existence. And there's going to be some bumpy roads for the rest of this year and into next year. But by the time summer and the final merger on screen, that everybody will finally get to see a Discovery HBO Max product in its entirety in summer 2023. When that finally comes out, I'm hoping they'll have everything worked out behind the scenes. Everything will be restructured to the point where we can finally get a cohesive product. And then, of course, finally work on a cohesive storyline for the DC universe going forward. I know what you would like as far as just trying to finalize the Snyderverse. But even if that's the case and they do or they don't, just something cohesive that people can understand and follow going forward.
Pick a path and stay on it. Whether, the Marvel Cinematic Universe has had flops. They've had things that people hated. They've had things that people loved. Just because a film does bad, don't veer from the path. Like, just keep moving forward. You can't have like, oh, this did bad, so now I'm going to restructure everything, because that is what's made the DC movies such a pain in the butt to follow.
What are your thoughts out there on this entire Warner Brothers, Discovery, HBO Max, DC Universe shakeup? This whole thing has gone down. It's not put a good light on this whole Warner Brothers HBO scenario. So please let us know your thoughts. PopCultureCosmos@yahoo.com.
And if you're ready to talk toys,
I haven't stopped talking toys. Let's get to it.
it's the Jay and Rob Toy Show, and we're back for season 2 for 10 more episodes of toy talking goodness. And this time we talk Marvel figures, we talk DC figures, holy grails, play sets, what if scenarios, and so much more. But we're not alone. We've brought a few friends with us this time. All that and of course our action figure spotlight. So check out the Jay and Rob Toy Show season 2, exclusively on Jinx Esports TV Canada.
Well, there's so much more to talk about on the back half of the show, my friend. Once again, it's the Pop Culture Cosmos. It's me, Gerald Glassford, along with my good friend, the Happy Hoarder himself, Josh Culture Cosmos. Any updates for us on the Happy Hoarder?
Yes, actually. The website's going to launch in the next few weeks here. I'm still in the process of waiting for the paperwork to come through with the licensing. I have a GoFundMe up. You don't have to give anything, but if you do have some extra change, you want to contribute to startup costs, I'd be grateful for that. And, you might even get something in return. But yeah, things are moving along, not obviously like I want to snap, and have everything finished and ready to go, but that's not realistic. So we're still getting things in stock. I've got a few Japanese import video games coming in, and we got a lot of DC Multiverse stuff, Marvel Legends figures, and retro Power Rangers. So I'm really excited about this.
It is the Happy Hoarder. Please go ahead and follow it today on Facebook so you can get constant updates on what's going on with the Happy Hoarder. Well, my friend, there's so much more to talk about on this back end of the show. Bullet Train with Brad Pitt. I know some people were thinking out there that could Brad Pitt still lead a #1 movie at the box office? And now, mind you, it did meet expectations from what analysts were saying at only $30 million domestically. Still going to be around $70 to $80 million worldwide in his first weekend at the box office. But that's right now, with the kids going back to school, people are more focused on doing other things than watching movie, maybe getting those last-minute vacations in. Unfortunately, the box office is going to suffer. This at $30 million here domestically might be the biggest weekend for many weeks. You and I were looking before we started the show, and over the next 2 months, maybe until late September, could we not see a opening of this kind? And it's only $30 million, but still, that's not really good long-term for the box office over the next 2 months.
Much like we were talking about video games, it's going to be a sparse year for successful movies as well. I'm glad they're putting things out, but they're still, look at HBO Max, and the troubles they're having. I think the film industry is still trying to find its footing in this post, pandemic landscape as things are slowly building up to hopefully what they used to be. But it's just the ground is very unstable right now for any type of entertainment out there. So we're looking, Bullet Train, I want to see it. Like, it looks cool. Like, it looks funny. This is one of those like non-franchise related movies where it's like, it's a flip of a coin how well it's going to do. It's the same thing with like horror movies and rom-coms. People are very hesitant to put that stuff out into a straight to theater release because they don't know what the return is going to look like, just because people aren't willing to go out of their house unless it's one of these like big event films.
We've seen some successes. Obviously, Top Gun Maverick at $1.35 billion. So that's a huge success for Paramount. And it hasn't even hit any digital outlets yet. So it's really something I think a lot of people are looking forward to on digital, and it's still making money at the box office. Minions has done over $700 million for Universal. Don't cry for Disney, though, because even though they didn't get to $1 billion with Doctor Strange, it's earned $954 million. Still getting there, Josh. Still getting there. Thor, Love, and Thunder. I know we thought ill of the movie, but it's going to actually end up over $700 million. There are some successes this summer that we've had. Minions, The Rise of Gru. That, again, $750 million there. And, of course, Jurassic World Dominion has earned $960 million, passing Doctor Strange. So there are some decent successes out there. This box office year is going to have its highs and lows. But right now, before we get into this lull, I think it's something good to reflect back on. There's been some good successes at the box office.
Yeah, there have. I'm curious to see how like Dragon Ball Super is going to do next weekend, and there have been successes, but I'm telling you, like, it's still a huge risk for any non-franchise related film to be put out right now because they don't have the advantage of having these massive followings. So it's like, remember, there's a day like when I worked in the movie theaters, you'd have every week it seemed like there'd be like a new horror movie, a new rom-com coming out, a new romantic comedy, a new action movie. Like, people were making all types of movies. You go to Target on a Tuesday and that new release section was packed. But now you just don't see that because people are, one, there's a streaming worlds out there, but also like people are very picky and choosy what they're spending their money on, especially like you look at what's going on with the economy. I think that people are not spending as much disposable income on going to see movies as they once did. And hopefully that will change one day. Hopefully, someone will be able to put out like a low budget Christmas movie, and it'll make $300-400 million for them. But I don't think we're quite there yet.
It's so funny because, again, I was running down the list of movies coming over the next couple of months, and when Avatar, the re-release, sticks out at you, that's not really that good of a sign.
James Cameron's a cheater. Can we talk about that for a second? He's a cheater, man. Like, saying that his movie had the biggest box office return of all time. That's because he's put it back in theaters like 4 times. That's cheating.
It is number one. I mean, the re-release overseas, it did very well there. That made it past Avengers Endgame, and then now I think with the re-release here in the States coming up in September ahead of the Avatar 2 sequel, I think that's just going to make it even more interesting. Don't Worry, Darling. That's the Olivia Wilde directed movie with Florence Pugh and Harry Styles. That's coming out near the end of September. I think until then, we might not see another movie score as well as Bullet Train, and Bullet Train only has gotten $30 million here domestically. Even though it met expectations, that's still not a huge opening by any stretch of the imagination. So some concerning things going on with the box office, but hey, you know what? That's going to leave us more time to go ahead and talk about other things in the world of pop culture.
I agree. And it's hard to be like an analyst right now because you just can't predict what's going to happen. This is unexplored territory for everybody, whether it's like video games, movies, books, comic books. Like, nobody really knows. Like, look at the convention scene has just kicked off again this summer, but it's like, they're not nearly as packed as they once were. So nobody can predict anything, We'll have a lot more to talk about, as the year progresses and we move into next year, because, I think that'll give us a better gauge at like how things like this are going to end up being.
Well, I will say that it did kick off very strong this weekend with Gen Con 2022 in Indianapolis. Of course, Evo here in Las Vegas. I know C2E2 for Chicago. Game On Expo in Arizona. That took place. That's a nice long-running convention that came back strong this year. San Antonio had a convention as well where Giancarlo Esposito was talking more about becoming possibly the next Professor X. So, yes, maybe people aren't attending conventions as much as they have in the past, but they're starting to get back into it. So we saw from San Diego Comic-Con a wide interest in going to it. So I think that we're going to be seeing more and more interest in conventions going forward. But yeah, this weekend was a really good weekend for conventions.
I'm actually heading down to the Bell County Comic-Con next weekend, so that'll be fun. But a lot coming up. I've been seeing a lot of Instagram posts from anime voice actors and Power Rangers and things like that. They're all traveling around the world again, and I'm glad people are getting back out there and empowering this very unique subculture of ours. I'm noticing that there's a coronavirus starts to trend every now and then, so it'll be I'm curious if it's the attendance at these things is going to stay constant or if it's going to fluctuate.
But we'll cover the major conventions right here at the Pop Culture Cosmos. There's been some great news over the past few days from Evo and also as well Gen Con, and we have it right there for you at Pop Culture Cosmos on Facebook. What are your thoughts out there on the convention scene? Are there any conventions that you're looking forward to? Please let us know. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. My friend, some last topics before we head on out. And one of them, as we talk about what's coming up in the not too distant future, because with the dearth of really hit movies on the way for the next couple months, our focus will turn to some major offerings, wouldn't you know it, even with the problems that they're having, HBO Max, which has pretty much been one of our topics of the day, because they will have Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon. That prequel will be coming out in a couple weeks, and we'll cover it more in detail on the Pop Culture Cosmos and PCC Multiverse. But also in September, right after that, you have on Amazon Prime, Lord of the Rings of Power. Now, I know in the world of high fantasy, I know it's been talked about how we wanted to see more high fantasy, and we're going to be getting a lot of it here in the coming weeks. Your thoughts on this, my friend? Which one are you more excited about? Lord of the Rings of Power, or Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon?
That's an interesting question, because I did enjoy Game of Thrones. Like, I love the books, but I look at,
Are
Game
you
of Thrones.
sure? We kind of like trashed
No,
both
no,
of
no,
those
no.
last season.
No. That's what I'm saying. Like, I enjoyed the experience of the show. I like the books even more, but I think about how the show ended and how disappointing that was, and then I think about how, like, seasons 2 through 7, right? Just like they felt like a because of the way it ended. It just felt like a massive, like, just space filler. So I'm wondering, like, how is House of the Dragon going to be something that keeps the ante moving, keeps the excitement at the same level throughout the entire season? And how many episodes, how many seasons is this show going to progress for? Like, I would hope that it would go to a point where the Jon Snow sequel to Game of Thrones is ready to be let out, or ready to be released. But they've done this stuff with Game of Thrones. It's been all the shock and awe and ooh and like, oh, I can't believe they did that. Like, it's been done before. So what are they going to do that's going to, make the series feel fresh and engaging, and, wash the disappointment of that last season out of people's mouths?
Well, I had told you before, and we talked about this before, I thought the natural way to go, according to what we saw in the ending of that last season, was an Arya Stark sequel, where she was on that ship going to unexplored lands, and I thought that following her adventure would have been the best or smartest way to go, the more natural way to go for Game of Thrones fans. I think that if you would have done it sooner, I think that would have probably been the more natural way to go, because if people were still hot off the presses in regards to Game of Thrones, now you're counting on people that have gone away from Game of Thrones that might get that Game of Thrones itch back. They need to get that Game of Thrones feeling back that they had watching every week after week after week. You're counting on them to return to that. And I'm not sure that everybody's going to come back. I'm not sure that, like you said, with season 8 leaving everybody, so many people with a bad taste in their mouths, if they are going to come back to watch Game of Thrones, and with all the problems that WB, HBO Max, and Discovery are having right now with all the restructuring, they need all the hits they can get. So that's a thing that I think should be of concern. So I think, I don't know, I just don't see it as much desire to go ahead and catch this prequel as I did before with season 8 of Game of Thrones.
Oh, absolutely. No, I totally agree with you. And I look at this like, what made Game of Thrones so intriguing? Like, what kept you going back to it during that series? Like, was it the dynamic between the characters? Was it the betrayal, or was it like the overall looming threat of the White Walkers? Like, there were so many overarching themes in this show that, like, tied it all together. So if you're going to move, obviously we know that, like, House of the Dragons is about the fall of the House Targaryen, but moving beyond that, you have a Snow, or if the Snow sequel, or if it's about Arya Stark, or whatever show they do, like, there has to be something like that keeps everything cohesive. Like Lord of the Rings, it's the threat is Moria, right, and Saruman and the orcs and all that. But Game of Thrones, like, if you're going to move beyond the Iron Throne to new lands, like, what is going to, you can't just have people fight a castle, like always. There has to be something that brings people together, like a big threat, a big bad. So I just, like, if they're going to keep adding on to this property, how are they going to do that?
And the fact that you already created a scenario for the creation of the White Walkers, because that would have been a nice thing to go ahead and look into more detail and more depth. And maybe you still can in the House of Dragon, but I don't see it having the same charm as if you just created it as part of this series. You've already touched on it as far as how the White Walkers came to be and all that, and kind of disappointed as far as being able to go ahead and explore that into enough detail, because again, your origin story has already been created in the regular Game of Thrones series, and going forward, you're going to have the Jon Snow series. Him being Black Knight in Marvel shouldn't detract. I have a feeling they're not going to have him as far as a huge part of the equation until Phase 6, because of the fact that he's going to be filming this series coming up in the not too distant future. So we'll see what happens with Jon Snow and that sequel. But House of the Dragon, I'm not only not as excited for. I guess maybe, again, for me, it's because of the bad taste season 8 left in my mouth.
George R. R. Martin had even said that that's not how he's ending the book. He hasn't finished writing it yet, but he said that's not how it's going to end.
Will he ever finish writing it?
Yeah, I don't know, but I feel like that last season was very rushed. I don't think I don't think they were given the option of going into another season. I think they had to wrap it up, and I feel like that was just is a very cheap move, like to have. I wasn't expecting a happy ending, but it just having Daenerys just die like that kind of made the whole thing seem pointless.
You're listening to the Pop Culture Cosmos. Don't touch that dial. Wait, do people still use dials?
If you're in the Las Vegas and Henderson areas and are looking to buy, sell, or trade the best in classic or current video games and pop culture collectibles, there's no better place to go than Retro City Games. From Xbox to PlayStation, Nintendo to Atari, the great crew at Retro City Games provides the best place to go for all your gaming options. Stop by their 2 awesome locations in Henderson and also the Las Vegas Strip, or follow Retro City Games on Facebook and Instagram for all the latest deals and new items. Without a doubt, there's no better place to go for your gaming needs than your friends at Retro City Games. Well, for me, I'm really leaning towards Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. Not only the fact that I love the series more than I've ever been infatuated with Game of Thrones, even though I thought at times, like you said, seasons 2 through 7 were pretty darn good for Game of Thrones. There were some really nice twists and turns that I think a lot of people really got into, such as yourself. I think for me, Lord of the Rings, even though the Hobbit series didn't connect with the Lord of the Rings fan community as well as the Lord of the Rings movies, the Hobbit series still garnered over $3 billion at the box office. And I know a lot of people still think, how did they make this so much money? But hey, people loved it. People enjoyed it. People went to go see it. And I think that there's been enough time now since the Hobbit series that we can go back into the world again. We're going back into the Second Age, which again, like Game of Thrones, a prequel going back in time. I don't know how much they will cover of that first cataclysmic war or battle. I know that they'll touch on it from what I'm seeing in the trailers. But I would hope that they go ahead and, I know we only saw glimpses of the battle at the beginning of Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, that really started this whole dynamic of the Lord of the Rings. But I would love to see even more about how that battle was set up, how it went into. I know we talked about Game of Thrones, House of Dragon, and you can't really go into the White Walkers a whole lot as far as the creation because you've already seen it. I know we saw a little bit of a taste of it in Lord of the Rings, but actually I think you could go into more of that. But that's the first age, so that's the problem. I think that they're only going to touch on it only a little bit as they go into and develop the Second Age and how that all came about.
Well, I mean, and with Lord of the Rings, like you look at, there's the first, second, third ages, like they all culminated in these like apocalyptic events, so there's always there are massive stories to tell in each of these things, and like very few people have actually read the backstory of all the Tolkien stuff. So, I mean, for an audience who's uninitiated, I guess you could say, it is exciting television. Looking at, what you were saying, I know that the Second Age spans hundreds and hundreds of years. So I mean, I'm curious, like if it's going to be one cohesive story, or if like each season is going to like make a time jump, or what, I don't know what that's going to look like. But
Well, I mean, Galadriel is going to be the major character that we're going to follow in a great portion of the series. And she does flashbacks to the First Age and the battle that ended the First Age. I think that's going to be good. I wish we'd gone more into it, but there's so much of the Second Age that we haven't seen. And as far as it almost gets overlooked, because when they talk about the First Age, talk about the battle of the First Age, they talk about going into the Third Age as far as delving into that. But the Second Age is something that almost gets overlooked. I am glad that they are going into it. I just wish they would have gone a little bit even farther back to cover a little bit more of the First Age and beyond.
And I feel like they will, like I feel like if this is successful, there will be a show revolving around the First Age. Like this is a big experiment for Amazon, with how much money they're dumping into this. But if this is successful, yeah, because I mean, The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings covers the Third Age. This show, Rings of Power, obviously covers the Second Age, and I'm sure that we will see something involving the First Age at some point should this show do really well. And looking at it, it looks awesome. It looks great. Like I know we talked about
$500 million, man.
Yeah, right. And I know we talked about budgets before, but like this, you look at a lot of the other fantasy shows on TV, they look like they're TV shows, but this looks like it's a movie. But my next question to you is, so Peter Jackson allegedly, like they had reached out to him about doing some script reading, and then he called back and they never called him back. So what do you think's going on with that?
It looked like they wanted his initial blessing, but it seemed like he maybe was too busy with Get Back, because that was a big success for him on Disney Plus. It's earned a lot of acclaim and awards for him, but just didn't seem like there was enough real vested interests on both sides. It just seemed like it was just like an offering. Hey, Josh, I think I'm just going to go ahead and give this to you for your approval, but if you want to, man, if you don't, no worries. I'm still going to go on and do my thing.
According to the contracts, like The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings that Peter Jackson did are still canon in what is being done on Amazon. So like I wonder, yeah. So I mean that makes me wonder too. Like I wonder, like depending on how successful this show is, are they going to reach a point where they're like, nah, I think we're going to do it better. Like we're going to do our own version of it.
You can't ignore $6 billion almost at the box office, and 20 years of great success of those movies.
I'm hoping, at some point we'll see like Ian McKellen and Hugo, what's his name? Weaving show up, like that would be really cool to me.
Well, you'll probably see younger characters of them.
Right. And if they hit the, well, I mean, when they get to the end of this age though, like if the show reaches all the way to the end of the Second Age, obviously we're going to see like aged versions of these characters, and possibly even like an Viggo Mortensen Aragorn showing up. Like that would be cool.
They have to do some age reducing technology on that. They've already been approved for season 2, so season 2 will obviously be something I think everybody will look at as far as how much further into the Second Age they go. But that's a ways down the line, my friend. That's a really long way.
Yeah, I know. Just big dreams though. Big dreams.
What are your thoughts out there on Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, and Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon? Which one are you looking forward to the most? Share us your thoughts. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. The big thing on streaming this weekend was, again, from Netflix and DC's property, The Sandman, which I'm still... You kind of explained it to me because this has been so far in production for such a long time. This was before really HBO Max got any momentum as far as being created and being run, so that's why it's on Netflix. I know a lot of people were questioning why is this DC property on Netflix, but The Sandman came out. A lot of people are liking it. The best advice I get after watching some episodes is, if you are familiar with the content and the adaptation that it's from and the comic book series it's from, this is really for you. It's a well-produced, it's a really good-looking fantasy, but obviously focusing on dreams and nightmares and the effects that they can have on us as a society. I think it's pretty good. I don't think it's great personally because I have not read the material. I think it would be better suited for me if I had read the material. Your thoughts on The Sandman on Netflix? Again, I think it's pretty good, but I know a lot of people are loving it that have read the comic books and are really appreciating the Sandman on Netflix.
I would love to have more of a history with Neil Gaiman properties, but I haven't really dived into a lot of them. I watched a couple seasons of American Gods and I've read his like Norse mythology book, but I don't have the expertise on his stuff like I would like. So I'm actually excited to kind of dive into Sandman a little bit. I'm finishing up Pacific Rim the Black on Netflix. So as soon as I'm done with that, I'll probably start watching Sandman. As long as it caters to the people who are fans of it, like I don't think that there is any expectation that this show is going to be something that brings in new people. I think that this, like at this point, this thing has been in production for so long that as long as it's a hit with the people that like it, I think that would be, a moderate success. But that being said, Netflix is not in a place to be able to put out moderate successes.
Especially with the cost of this, because it's rumored to be as much as $20 million per episode.
Yeah, gee whiz. Yeah. It's okay for this not to be on HBO Max, I guess is what I'm trying to say, because, it's not tied into the DC universe at all. So this is like one of those old contractual obligations. Like this was with Netflix before HBO Max even took off. So like I said, though, I'm excited to see. And if you said it was all right, I trust you. So I'll probably give it a go here, and we'll I'll have more comments on it at a later date.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll touch more on it when you go ahead and check it out. Again, I thought it was all right, but if you're really into the comic adaptation, I think it's something more for you. But if you have thoughts out there on The Sandman on Netflix, please let us know. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Well, my friend, it's been a great episode, but before we head on out, I want to mention upcoming this week on Disney Plus, the short series of cartoons or animated features from Marvel. I Am Groot coming out this week on August the 10th. I also want to touch on the fact that the Orville, all 3 seasons, and season 3 has left us in limbo as far as the future for that series, but all 3 seasons are going to hit Disney Plus on August the 10th as well. And Seth MacFarlane, the creator of the Orville, has said that if it does well, it could still have a future. But I Am Groot is also coming out on August the 10th. Any thoughts on I Am Groot catching it on Disney Plus this week?
No, probably it's not for me. There's so many things that I'm trying to watch. It's just not a priority for me. I'm
maybe
sure
for the kids.
Yeah, I'm sure my kids will watch it. I just don't like. I don't know. I feel like this is kind of a cheap story because like all they need to do is have him be cute and say I am Groot, and people will love it. So it just doesn't seem like it's going to have the depth that's required to keep my attention or keep my focus. But again, I'm going to let my kids watch it, and then I'm going to ask them to tell me their opinion, and then I will relay their opinion on the Pop Culture Cosmos next weekend.
Sounds good, my friend. But imagine 8 years ago, remember, 8 years ago, there was a little movie that we weren't sure was going to do well, and that was Guardians of the Galaxy. And look at since then, what it's become. 3 movies, holiday special, and I Am Groot.
It's crazy to think it was made that long ago.
It came out in August, man. A rare August hit.
I know. And what a gem that was, too.
Absolutely, indeed. But what are your thoughts out there? You're going to catch I Am Groot this week or the Orville? Please go ahead if you are a fan of the Orville or are looking to go ahead and catch something as far as a sci-fi series is concerned. Please go ahead and check out the Orville this week. The very existence continuing for the Orville could depend on it. But please let us know your thoughts. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Well, my friend, it's been a fantastic episode. We were able to go ahead and get through another amazing weekend of pop culture, and looking forward to the week ahead for us here at the Pop Culture Cosmos. But any last thoughts before we head on out?
Shameless self-promotion here, but if you guys want to go to the Happy Hoarder Facebook page, give it a like. I'm working on putting an Instagram together, and like I said, if you feel generous, we're doing a GoFundMe for the Happy Hoarder startup costs. No pressure or anything. I will launch this with just the coins in my pocket if I have to, so don't feel pressured. Yeah, just share it with your friends. Any type of love is appreciated.
The Happy Hoarder, indeed. So for Josh Culture Cosmos, a.k.a. Josh Peterson, this is Gerald Glassford. It's another beautiful day in paradise right here in the Pop Culture Cosmos. We thank you for listening. And here's hoping you have yourself a great day.
You're listening to a Weeby Geeks Network podcast.
Tangent Bound Network. Let your voice be heard. TangentBoundNetwork.com.
Thanks so much for downloading the Pop Culture Cosmos, and stay tuned as more great podcasts are on the way. Thanks again for listening to us here at the Pop Culture Cosmos.